The Galactic Conclave had watched humanity for 3 standard cycles since first contact. The verdict among the elder races was clear. The humans were soft. Too soft to survive in a galaxy that did not forgive weakness. Ambassador Irelveth of the Dominion stood at the observation window of the great station. His 4 eyes watched the small blue ships descending toward Cathani Prime. The ships carried food and medicine. They carried doctors and engineers. They carried hope for a species that had tried to destroy humanity just 2 years ago. The Cathani had attacked a human exploration vessel without warning. They had killed 47 humans in that attack. Men and women who had come in peace. Scientists and navigators who had wanted only to learn about new worlds. The Cathani had torn their ship apart and left the bodies floating in the cold dark of space. Now the Cathani homeworld was burning. Not from human weapons. Their own civil war had broken their civilization. Their cities were in ruins. Their people were starving. Their children were dying from diseases that spread through the camps of refugees, and the humans had come to help them. Irelveth watched the ships land. He watched human doctors step out into the ash and smoke. He watched them kneel beside Cathani wounded. The same species that had murdered their people. The same species that had celebrated the attack on the human vessel. They forgive everything, Irelveth said to his aide. They forgive the burning of Station Prometheus. They forgive the assassination of their diplomat on Vex 4. They forgive the slaughter of their colony on Meridian. 300 humans died on Meridian, children among them. And what do the humans do? They send strongly worded messages. They stop trading. They offer to talk. His aide made a sound of agreement. They have prey animals playing at civilization. Irelveth turned away from the window. Send my report to the Conclave. And send a copy to the hegemony of Krath. They will find this information very interesting. The report spread through the galaxy like fire through dry grass. It reached every corner of known space. It reached the dark places where predator species gathered to plan their conquests. It reached the hegemony of Krath. The Krath were not a kind species. They had conquered 42 star systems through blood and terror. They did not negotiate. They did not trade. They took what they wanted and destroyed what they could not use. Their worlds were built on the bones of species that had been too weak to stop them. Supreme Commander Vorath read the report in his war chamber. He was massive, even by Krath standards. His body was covered in thick plates of natural armor. His claws could tear through steel. His eyes glowed with the cold light of a species that had forgotten mercy long ago. Tell me more about these humans, Vorath said. His intelligence officer pulled up data on a screen. They are a young species, Supreme Commander. They left their homeworld only 300 years ago. They have spread to 47 systems. Their population is approximately 12 billion across all worlds. Their military strength? Modest. They have a defensive fleet of approximately 2,000 vessels. Most are small patrol ships. They have converted some mining vessels into warships, but these are not true military craft. They have no invasion forces. No ground troops designed for conquest. Vorath made a sound deep in his throat. It might have been laughter. And they help their enemies. They heal those who kill them. They feed those who hate them. Yes, Supreme Commander. They believe in something they call compassion. They think all species can learn to live together in peace. Now Vorath did laugh. The sound echoed through the war chamber like thunder. Then they are fools. And fools must pay for their foolishness. He stood and walked to the great map that showed all of Krath space. Beyond the borders, in a region of space marked with human symbols, lay their worlds. Rich worlds. Fertile worlds. Worlds full of resources and technology and slaves waiting to be taken. We will test them, Morris said. A small raid. Nothing that would provoke a real war. We will see how they respond to blood. The first attack came 3 weeks later. New Providence was a quiet world. It was an agricultural colony on the edge of human space. 20,000 people lived there. Farmers and their families. Scientists studying the native plants. Teachers and doctors and shopkeepers building a community in the vast, dark between the stars. The Krath ships came out of nowhere. They dropped from faster-than-light travel directly above the main settlement. They did not send warnings. They did not ask for surrender. They simply began to fire. The attack lasted 4 hours. When it was over, 200 colonists were dead. 3,000 more had been taken aboard the Krath ships. They would be slaves now, property of the hegemony. The Krath broadcast the attack across human networks. They showed the burning buildings. They showed the crying children being dragged into ships. They showed the bodies lying in the streets. Varath waited for the response. He expected panic. He expected terror. He expected humans to crawl to him and beg for mercy. Instead, he received a polite diplomatic message. The message was written in formal language. It expressed deep concern about the incident. It requested the immediate return of the prisoners. It offered to negotiate compensation for the Krath's perceived grievances. It suggested a meeting to discuss the establishment of diplomatic relations. It was signed by the human Minister of External Affairs. Varath read the message 3 times. He could not believe what he was seeing. He had attacked their world. He had killed their people. He had taken their citizens as slaves. And they wanted to negotiate? He laughed until his throat bled. These creatures are not just soft, he said to his officers. They are broken. They do not know how to fight. They do not know how to hate. They will give us everything we want, and we will not have to lift a claw to take it. His officers made sounds of agreement. They began to plan the next attack. And the one after that. And the one after that. Across the galaxy, the elder races of the Conclave watched and waited. Some felt pity for the humans. Some felt contempt. A few felt something else. Something like fear. But they did not understand why. Not yet. On Earth. In a quiet office in a building that had once been called the Pentagon, a woman sat at a desk covered in reports. She had gray hair and tired eyes and the kind of calm that came from seeing too much. Her name was Admiral Sarah Chun, and she was the highest-ranking officer in the United Human Confederacy's military. She read the report from New Providence. She read the diplomatic response that had been sent. She read the intelligence assessments about the Krath hegemony. Then she opened a drawer in her desk and pulled out a folder marked with a simple code, Contingency Omega. She did not open it. Not yet. She simply placed it on her desk where she could see it. Let us hope, she said to the empty room, that they are wise enough to stop. But she knew they would not stop. Species like the Krath never stopped. They pushed and pushed and pushed until something pushed back. She looked at the folder on her desk. The galaxy thought humans were gentle. The galaxy thought humans were weak. The galaxy thought humans had forgotten how to be predators. The galaxy was about to learn that mercy was not the same as weakness, and patience was not the same as fear. Admiral Chun closed her eyes and waited for the next report. It would come soon. The Krath would attack again, and again, and again, until they went too far. Everyone always did. For 18 months, the Krath tested human patience with careful cruelty. Each attack was designed to hurt. Each attack was designed to humiliate. Each attack was designed to prove that humans would never fight back. They struck civilian transports, carrying families to new colony worlds. They bombed a hospital ship that was treating refugees from a plague-stricken planet. They captured human traders and sold them in slave markets across the hegemony. Supreme Commander Vorath grew bolder with each success. The humans did nothing. They sent more diplomatic messages. They imposed economic sanctions. They made speeches at the Galactic Conclave about peace and understanding. They are sheep, Voreth told his war council. They bleed and cry, but they do not bite. We could take their worlds one by one, and they would still try to negotiate. He decided to prove his point. On the anniversary of first contact between humans and the galaxy, the Krath organized a special broadcast. They gathered all the human prisoners they had taken over the past year. 147 men, women, and children. They executed them one by one in front of cameras that broadcast to every human world. The Galactic Conclave called an emergency session. Ambassador Relveth of the Dominion stood before the assembled species and demanded action against the Krath, not because he cared about humans. He had called them prey animals, but the executions had been too much. Even predator species had rules. The human ambassador, a woman named Sarah Chen, who had once been an admiral, sat quietly through the debates. When other species offered their support, she thanked them politely. When others demanded that she authorize military action, she said that humanity was still seeking a peaceful solution. The Conclave watched in disbelief. The Krath had murdered her people on live broadcast, and she wanted peace? Voreth watched the broadcast from the Conclave and laughed. She is weak. Her entire species is weak. They have no fire in them, no rage, no will to fight. He decided to push one more time. One final test to prove that humans would never be a threat. The Esperanza was a generation ship. It was one of the largest vessels humanity had ever built. 5 kilometers long and 2 kilometers wide. It carried 40,000 colonists to a new homeworld on the far edge of human space. Most of the passengers were families. Parents who wanted a fresh start. Children who had never known any home but the ship's corridors. Grandparents who had chosen to spend their final years building something new. The ship had no weapons. It had no armor. It had only engines and life support and the dreams of 40,000 people. Voreth sent 12 warships to intercept it. They caught the Esperanza 3 days out from its destination. The Krath ships surrounded it like wolves around a wounded deer. They fired on the engines first, crippling the great ship so it could not run. Then they boarded it. What happened next was broadcast across the galaxy for 6 hours. The Krath made sure every human world could watch. They made sure the Conclave could watch. They made sure everyone could see what happened to species that were too weak to fight back. 40,000 people. Men, women, and children. Gone. The broadcast ended when the Krath ships fired on the Esperanza's reactor. The explosion lit up that corner of space like a small sun. There were no survivors. For 3 days, human space went silent. No diplomatic messages. No economic sanctions. No speeches at the Conclave. No protests in the streets of human cities. Just silence. The Conclave's monitoring stations detected a strange signal coming from human worlds. A low hum that seemed to vibrate through their communication networks. Analysts studied it for hours before they finally understood. What they were hearing. It was the sound of a species praying on Earth. In churches and temples and mosques and synagogues and 1,000 other places of worship, humans gathered. They prayed for the souls of the dead. They prayed for their families. They prayed for the children who had died in the cold dark between the stars. And they prayed for themselves, for what they were about to become. On the 4th day, a single message was broadcast on all frequencies. It was transmitted in every language known to the galaxy. It reached every corner of civilized space. The message was short. We offered you our hand. You took our children. Mercy has limits. It was signed by the United Human Confederacy. At the Galactic Conclave. Ambassador Chun stood and gathered her things. She did not ask permission to leave. She did not explain where she was going. She simply walked toward the exit. Ambassador Urelvith stepped into her path. Ambassador Chun, what is happening? What are your people planning? She looked at him. Her eyes were different now. Something had changed behind them. Something old and cold had woken up. We offered them mercy, she said. They refused it. Now they will receive something else. What? She did not answer. She walked past him without another word. The door closed softly behind her. Urelvith stood alone in the hallway. He had seen many things in his long life. He had seen wars and plagues and the fall of civilizations. But he had never seen what he saw in Ambassador Chen's eyes. It was not anger. It was not hatred. It was not even rage. It was purpose. He returned to the assembly hall and sent an urgent message to the Dominion. Begin evacuation of all assets near human space, immediately. His aide asked why. Because I was wrong about them, Urelvith said. They are not prey animals. They were never prey animals. They simply chose not to hunt. And now? Urelvith looked at the empty seat where the human ambassador had been sitting. Now they have stopped choosing. Across human space, something was happening. Factory worlds that had been producing consumer goods went dark. When they came back online, they were producing something else. Mining ships that had been gathering ore stopped their operations and returned to port. When they left again, they were armed. Research stations that had been studying medicine and agriculture sealed their doors. No one knew what they were studying now, and everywhere, on every human world, people stopped arguing. Politicians who had fought for years over budgets and policies suddenly agreed on everything. Religious leaders who had debated theology for centuries stood together. Corporations that had competed for market share began working as one. The Krath intelligence service watched this and grew confused. What are they doing? An officer asked Vorith. They seem to be preparing for something, but our sources cannot determine what. Vorith dismissed the concern with a wave of his clawed hand. They are having a tantrum. Like children who have been punished. They will cry for a while, and then they will return to their peaceful ways. They have no other choice. They are sheep. Sheep cannot become wolves. But somewhere in the back of his mind, in a place he would never admit existed, a small voice whispered a question. What if they were never sheep at all? What if they were simply wolves who had chosen to graze? Vorith pushed the thought aside. It was ridiculous. No predator species chose to be weak. No species with the power to dominate chose. Mercy instead. He was sure of this. Almost sure. He ordered his fleet to prepare for the next phase of the campaign. The humans had shown they would not fight. Now it was time to begin the real conquest. He did not know that 30 days from now, his empire would begin to burn. He did not know that he had just made the worst mistake in the history of his species. He did not know that mercy has limits. And humanity had just reached theirs. Supreme Commander Vorith had studied human military capabilities with great care. He knew their fleet was modest. He knew their weapons were defensive. He knew they had no experience with real war. He calculated that he could crush all human resistance in 8 standard weeks. His officers agreed. The campaign would be simple. They would strike hard and fast. They would break the human will to fight before it could form. He was wrong. He had not accounted for what humans were willing to become when mercy failed. Within 30 days of the Esperanza's destruction, something changed across human space. Industrial worlds that had produced consumer goods went silent. When Krath spies finally got images of what was happening, they did not understand what they saw. Every factory, every shipyard, every manufacturing station in human space had converted to war production. Not partially, completely. Consumer goods disappeared. Entertainment stopped. Luxury items vanished from stores. Everything human civilization produced was now pointed at one goal: the destruction of the Krath hegemony. Mining ships that had peacefully gathered ore from asteroid fields returned to port. They came out again with their cargo holds empty and their hulls covered in weapons, kinetic accelerators, missile launchers, energy projectors that Krath intelligence had never seen before. Agricultural stations that had grown food for colonies began producing something else: automated weapons platforms, combat drones. Billions of them, built in weeks when the Krath had estimated it would take years. And the people, the humans themselves, they did not riot or panic or argue. The species that had been divided by politics, religion, culture, and ideology became one. Not through force, not through propaganda, through a shared understanding that transcended words. They had offered peace. They had offered mercy. They had offered friendship. The Krath had murdered their children. Now there was nothing left to discuss. The first Krath world to fall was a military outpost called Vexor Station. It sat on the border between Krath and human space. It had strong defenses, 20 warships, ground forces, shield generators, early warning systems. The human fleet appeared without warning. The early warning systems had not detected them. The shield generators failed before they could activate. A weapon the Krath had never seen before hit the station from orbit and disabled everything electronic in a single pulse. Then the ground troops came. The Krath were larger than humans, stronger. They had natural armor and claws that could cut through metal. They had been warriors for 10,000 years. The humans moved through them like wind through grass. There was no rage in the human soldiers, no hatred, no anger. They did not curse or scream or mock their enemies. They simply killed, efficiently, quietly, completely. Vexor Station fell in 4 hours. There were no broadcasts asking for surrender. There were no demands for negotiation. There were no prisoners. The Galactic Conclave demanded an explanation. The human representative responded calmly that humanity was resolving a security concern. They would welcome dialogue when necessary operations were complete. 6 Krath worlds fell in the first month. Military bases, weapons factories, training grounds. Each one was hit with the same precision, the same silence, the same terrible efficiency. Then 12 worlds fell. Then counting became difficult. Human forces had begun striking multiple systems at the same time. Their fleet, which Krath intelligence had estimated at 2,000 modest vessels, now seemed to number in the tens of thousands. Where had they come from? How had they been built so fast? Vorath ordered his intelligence service to find answers. They could not. Every spy they sent into human space disappeared. Every probe was destroyed. Every communication was intercepted. The humans had become invisible and unstoppable. In desperation, Vorath ordered the execution of all remaining human prisoners in Krath space. There were still several thousand of them, workers and traders who had been captured before the war. He broadcast the executions as he had broadcast the ones before. He expected fear. He expected the humans to pause. He expected some reaction. The human response was to accelerate their timetable. 20 Krath worlds fell in the second month. Then 30. Military targets at first. Then infrastructure. Then everything. The humans did not negotiate. They did not offer surrender terms. They did not explain their goals or their demands. They simply destroyed. Ambassador Arelvith watched from the safety of Dominion space as reports came in. He had evacuated his people just in time. The war was not spreading beyond Krath territory. The humans were focused on one target only: They are not conquering, he reported to the conclave. They are not expanding. They are eliminating. This is not a war of conquest. This is a war of extinction. The conclave debated what to do. Some wanted to intervene. Others wanted to let the humans finish. A few argued that the Krath had brought this upon themselves. One ancient species, the Vrikar, who had known humans since first contact, spoke quietly. Do not interfere. Do not draw their attention. They are doing something they hate. Let them finish before they remember how to stop. What do you mean? Irelvath asked. We have studied human history, the Vrikar said. Their species has done this before. To themselves. They called it many names. Total war. Unconditional surrender. They are capable of terrible things when they decide something must end. But they are also capable of stopping, of rebuilding, of forgiving. If we interfere now, while they are in this state, they may not stop. They may not remember how. The conclave chose to wait. Vorath retreated to his homeworld of Ashkora. He had lost 3/4 of his territory in 2 months. His fleet was destroyed. His armies were broken. His allies had abandoned him. He fortified Ashkora with everything he had left. Orbital defenses, ground forces, shield generators. The planet was a fortress. They cannot take this world, he told his remaining officers. We will hold here. They will grow tired. They will remember their precious mercy. They will offer negotiations. His officers did not believe him, but they had nowhere else to go. The human fleet arrived on the 73rd day of the war. They did not attack the orbital defenses. They did not engage the fleet. They did not land ground troops. Instead, they redirected 3 asteroids into carefully calculated trajectories. Each one was the size of a small mountain. Each one was moving at a fraction of the speed of light. The first asteroid hit the northern hemisphere. The second hit the southern. The third hit the ocean. Ashkora burned, but it did not end there. When Krath leadership fled to their underground bunkers, human ground forces were already waiting. They had infiltrated the planet weeks earlier, disguised as slave laborers, hidden in supply shipments, moving through the chaos of a dying empire. One by one, the Krath leadership was found. One by one, they were dealt with. Only Vorath was captured alive. The humans had specific questions about the Esperanza's final hours. They wanted to know who had given the orders. They wanted to know who had carried them out. They wanted names. Vorath answered every question. He had no choice. The humans were very good at asking when the questions were finished. So was Vorath. The war was over. It had lasted 81 days. The Krath hegemony, which had terrorized 42 star systems for 1,000 years, no longer existed, and the galaxy looked at humanity with new eyes. Not with contempt, not with pity, not even with fear, with awe. And with a question that would echo through civilized space for generations. What were they now? The Krath homeworld of Ashkora burned for 9 days. The fires could be seen from orbit. The smoke covered continents. The seas boiled where the asteroids had struck. The atmosphere itself seemed to cry out in pain. When the fires finally died, the planet was still there, scarred, changed, but not destroyed. The humans had calculated their strikes with terrible precision. Enough force to break the Krath military forever. Not enough to kill the planet itself. They were not interested in genocide. They were interested in making sure the Krath could never hurt anyone again. The terms of surrender were simple. The Krath hegemony ceased to exist as a political entity. All military assets were to be dismantled. All weapons research was to stop. The colonies the Krath had conquered were given their freedom. The species the Krath had enslaved were released. The Krath population itself was scattered across the galaxy. They were forbidden from gathering in groups larger than 10,000 for the next 100 years. They would live among other species. They would learn to be peaceful, or they would be dealt with again. There was no debate. There was no negotiation. The Krath accepted the terms because they had no other choice, and then the humans went home. Within a year, everything had returned to normal. The massive fleets that had destroyed the hegemony were reduced back to their original modest size. The weapons platforms were dismantled. The factories returned to making consumer goods. Human merchants appeared at trading stations with the same friendly smiles as before. Human doctors traveled to plague-stricken worlds to offer aid. Human diplomats returned to the Galactic Conclave with offers of cooperation and peace. A new generation ship launched from Earth. It was called the New Esperanza. It carried the families of those who had died on the first one. It traveled to the world its predecessor had never reached. Life continued. Humans continued to be kind. Humans continued to be generous. Humans continued to offer mercy to those who wronged them. But something had changed in the way. The galaxy looked at them. Ambassador Irelvith of the Dominion had spent months studying the war. He had read every report. He had interviewed every witness. He had tried to understand what had happened and what it meant. Now he sat across from the new human representative to the conclave. Her name was Ambassador Chun. She smiled easily and spoke of trade agreements and cultural exchange. She was warm and friendly, and exactly the kind of person other species liked to deal with. But Irelvith could not forget what her species had done. "We do not understand," he said at last. "Your species was so gentle. Even after everything. The attacks, the murders, the Esperanza. You offered peace every time. And then you became—" He paused, searching for words. "Efficient," Ambassador Chun said. Her smile did not change, but something shifted behind her eyes. Just for a moment. Like a door briefly opening onto a vast and terrible room before closing again. "Yes," Irelvith said. "Efficient. That is the word. We still are gentle," she said. "That is rather the point, Ambassador. We did not want to become what we became. We never do. But your colleagues learned an important lesson about my species, which is—" She set down her cup of tea. She folded her hands on the table. Her voice was calm and pleasant, as if she were discussing the weather. "The wolf that plays with the sheep is still a wolf. We simply prefer to graze. We find it more pleasant for everyone involved. The Krath forced us to remember what we are." She stood, gathering her materials. Her manner was once again warm and professional. The door behind her eyes had closed completely. "Please make sure the conclave remembers too," she said. "We so hate having to remind people." The door closed softly behind her. Irelvith sat alone for a long time. He thought about mercy. He thought about patience. He thought about the terrible patience of a species that preferred peace but had never forgotten how to make war. He thought about the reports he had read, about the speed of the human response, about the weapons that appeared from nowhere, about the way an entire civilization had transformed itself in 30 days. He realized something that made his blood run cold. The humans had always been ready. The weapons had not been invented in 30 days. They had been invented long ago and stored away. The plans for total war had not been drawn up in a moment of rage. They had been drawn up carefully, over years, by people who hoped they would never be needed. The humans had always known what they could become. They had simply chosen not to. Every act of kindness, every offer of peace, every moment of mercy, all of it was a choice. A conscious decision by a species that could have dominated the galaxy. From the moment they left their homeworld, they had chosen to be gentle, and they could choose to stop being gentle. Whenever they wanted, Irelvith wrote a new report that night. It was sent to every member of the Dominion. It was sent to every species in the conclave. It carried a simple message: do not mistake human kindness for weakness. Do not mistake their patience for inability. Do not mistake their mercy for lack of strength. They are the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because of what they will do, but because of what they choose not to do. Be grateful for their mercy, and never, ever make them regret offering it. The report spread across the galaxy. It was read by every species in civilized space. It became part of the required education for young members of the conclave. And in the centuries that followed, no one ever tested human mercy again. Humans continued to be kind. They continued to help those in need. They continued to offer friendship to species that had wronged them. They continued to believe in peace and cooperation and the better nature of all living things. They were gentle creatures. Everyone knew this. They were also wolves who had chosen to graze, and the galaxy never forgot it. On Earth, in a quiet office in a building that had once been called the Pentagon, an old woman named Admiral Sarah Chun sat at her desk. She had retired from active service long ago. Now she served as an advisor, a voice of experience for a new generation. In her desk was a folder marked Contingency Omega. It had been updated many times since the Krath War. New weapons, new strategies, new plans for new enemies. She hoped it would never be needed again, but she kept it ready, just in case, because mercy has limits, and humanity would never forget its own.